Don't pour beer in my motor.
We had a couple of days off midweek, 3 BMW GSs and a thirst for adventure. Phil was riding one of the current 1250s, a GSA. Dan was on an older, all-cooled R1200GS. And I was riding a 39-year-old R80G PD, the model that started the whole GS thing. The bike spanned 6 generations of GSs and almost 40 years of BMW adventure bikes, and we wanted to find some adventure, plenty of dirt, and we had an idea about tackling some more challenging terrain. The basic plan was to head down the South Coast a little and enjoy a few mountain roads before playing in the dirt around the boundaries of Belanglo State Forest, before heading out towards Swallowtail Pass and onto Guineacor Fire Trail. Now, based on the amount of time remaining, we're going to head northwest and see what we found. Our research indicated that Guineacore was probably going to be pretty challenging on the big bikes, and so we stayed really flexible with our plans. Rolling into Guineacore, I pulled the GoPro out and turned the camera on, expecting some adventure. Phil had watched all the videos online and was really concerned about our chances, while Dan was completely unaware of what lay ahead. Phil even brought a tow rope, but I didn't like our chances of pulling 250 kilo adventure bikes up these steep hills if we needed to. These twin tracks were a lot of fun, just challenging enough to keep you engaged with what you were doing, but certainly quite achievable on the larger bikes. However, if it was wet, it could easily be a different story. Soon enough, we found a soft, silty mud hole that Phil had seen videos of others stuck in. Dan was out pre-walking the mud, and before long we were slipping on through, settling our nerves along the way. It wasn't really textbook mud riding, but we knew that if these upcoming hills were wet, we wouldn't be going anywhere near them.
That was alright, it's a little bit deep, but just straight through.
Phil safely through, Dan was next, and he got pushed off balance by a side stand that was still there. Dan was probably trying a little bit too hard to stay out of the main puddle, but he worked his way through it. So Guineacore was the real focus of this ride, and it's got a reputation, and we knew that it might be quite challenging. We headed off after that mud hole, and we didn't really ace the mud hole, so I can't say that we were feeling super confident. A little bit further down along the road, then just rolled over a bit of a crest, and we were committed to what we assumed would be the hard part of the ride. The GoPro always flattens things out, but there was pretty significant erosion, some decent sized rocks, and a slippery surface. As we rolled down this really steep section, gathering speed, I could see Dan locked up and sliding off into the weeds further down the hill. We worked our way down this very steep section to an abandoned four-wheel drive, and there was a consensus among the group that we really didn't want to try to ride back out that way. Through this steep section, you can see how rutted out the left hand and centre lines are. There really weren't too many options. Phil was the last rider down this section, and I feel like he might have been using all that cool technology in the 1250GS just to stay upright.
That would be hard to ride up.
Yeah. Nice work. Lock it up. Normally don't mind going down hills, but that one...
Yeah.
I stalled halfway down this bottom bit.
I saw you lock up the back, yeah. The section just above this last little bit, you can't slow down, you know, like you're actually gaining momentum.
Yeah.
I do feel like we're committed now, Phil.
Oh yeah. We're committed to top action.
This next section down to the creek was really steep but rideable, especially by comparison with the earlier section. It was great to get a little bit of air flowing through the jacket and cool things down. Carry a bit of speed and pick lines in between the rocks. Always aware that tucking the front wheel probably wouldn't be all that awesome. In the back of our minds, we also knew this might be our only way out. So we were looking for lines that maybe would work if we had to climb back out the same way. Arriving at the creek after another little bog hole, it was great to see a pristine creek with a lizard running across the top of the water. The creek was something that I was a little worried about, so it was a relief to see that it didn't look too deep to cross. We took some time to swim, cool ourselves down and explore possible lines for the creek crossing, knowing that the climb out might have us and the bikes boiling hot. Dan was first across the creek, choosing a straightish line and bouncing his way across some big slippery rocks with some success. Phil found a shorter, shallower line that looked like a real pain in the butt to get to. Crossing the creek, however, we loved his commitment, and he even threw a couple of rocks at us to celebrate. The pressure was on for me on the old girl, and I wasn't feeling overly confident. I found water in the gearbox, shaft and diff oil from a previous trip the night before, and I wasn't too keen to fill the bike back up with water. Not far into the creek, I was sure that the clutch was slipping, and I jumped off and pushed, because I knew that clutch was going to be really important if we were going to get out of this valley. In hindsight, I think it was just the rear wheel spinning on the slippery rocks, but there was so little grip I couldn't even tell the back wheel was spinning.
So we just got across the creek, been swimming, and we've got a bit of a tough hill climb apparently.
Boys coming first.
The boys had pre-walked the first hill climb, so I had a little bit of information about which line to pick. It was straightforward enough with a bit of momentum. Of course, there's a few rocks there to try and catch you out.
Oh yeah.
Phil got up this first hill, first try. He was putting his long spider legs to good use, and even popping a little wheelie to gain some style points. Next up was Dan, and he was cruising up, although it sounded like his bike was cutting out the whole way.
So we're climbing out of Guineacor Fire Trail out of the creek, right down the bottom there. Dan's just gone down to get his jacket. We've got 3 bikes up to the corner here, and there's a pretty fair washout with a big drop over the side.
We decided the only safe approach was to cross over away from the edge and roll the dice on the rocky steps. Dan was first to tackle this one, and the first attempt didn't go to plan. Turns out neither did the second attempt. That one was a full 3-man lift. We knew there would be no successful stopping on that section. Dan got much better traction on his third attempt, and with full commitment he managed to get through those rocky step-ups. I was up next and managed to get some solid traction on takeoff. The old Beamer just putting its way up through the technical terrain. Phil was last through this section, and he decided to go back down the hill a bit to get a run up for the top. He came up on the pegs and got through cleanly. We were all pretty excited to get through this section. It was the hardest thing that we'd done, and we'd managed to get through without breaking any bikes or people.
No, you go.
Are you worried?
Hey?
Are you worried I'm going to crash into you?
No, no.
The next section was a steady climb. There were plenty more rocks along the way, some erosion washouts, and we were still climbing. After another maybe kilometre of this, Phil was happy to call the top, but I wasn't sure that we'd finished the hard part yet.
Teamwork.
That could have been a 2 or 3 hour job pretty easily.
So there's a few more rocks and then some smoother fire trail. We ended up at Wombian Caves Road with a sense of achievement.
Oh my.
Fuck! There's a few rocks coming up there, did you notice?
Yeah, a couple of rocks. See that rock in the middle of the track?
I saw every rock in the middle of the track. I think you had to be a little bit, mindful, because you're like, fuck, that's a big rock. Like you've just gone through a hard section.
Now, if I'd done some research, there's a good chance I would have tuned out on this.
That's why I did do the research, you know. Yeah.
Oh, great day out, mate. Thanks for the
Yeah, that was fun.
ride.
We made the call to head down Langs Road towards Taralga Pub, settle in for some refreshments, 4:30 p.m. lunch, and develop our plan for the next day. After a few beers, we went and played with our bikes. I figured the Paris-Dakar would like a sip of oil, and I was pretty sure something would have rattled loose on one of the bikes.
Pour beer in my face.
Phil was kind enough to help out with the oil fill.
I don't need anywhere near that much, but yes. Thank you.
Team mechanic.
All changes.
The domino effect could be really quite embarrassing.
So all changes by Phil. Actually, no, just the top up.
Nothing to see here.
What do you have to say about that, Phil?
Yeah, not bad. Rookie was good.
So tell us about your maintenance schedule, Phil.
No, it's just a replacement part. I'll
Theoretical.
order it from BMW online tomorrow morning.
It's a consumable, is it?
Yeah. Second time.
Yeah, okay. What's that worth?
$128.
Yeah, nice.
Make one tin foil.
So we've just worked out what the missing panel is for.
It's a stereo.
The next day was always going to be mellower, and we worked our way out towards the old mining town of Guineacore. We were looking for interesting tracks along the way, but there weren't a lot of great options. Fire Trail was probably our favourite trail for the day, and the ride out through Guineacor Caves Road was quite nice, but there was nothing to match the adventure of the first day. There was even a tiny log crossing to take care of. That was about 100 times easier than it looked. After 2 days of chatting about adventure riding and what's important in adventure riding, I think we came to the agreement that being uncertain about the outcome is a really important part of the adventure. It was a really fun trip. We got through the one trail that we really wanted to do. We were certainly challenged. It was an adventure. The outcome was unclear at times, but we all had fun and we got through with no real damage. When we stopped before we parted ways, it was all about what we're going to do next time, where we're going to go, and how hard it might be. So a quick recap, we're getting towards the end of the ride, about 550 k's so far, maybe 50 k's to go. There's a couple of things that have come up. You can see a pretty significant oil leak down around the dip. I can only assume that over the breather here, it's either over-pressurized or maybe centrifugal force is forcing the oil out. It did get super hot earlier on. I had a couple issues with the mounting of the seat, I had to remove the toolbox because it was bouncing around a bit too much because of that lithium battery that I've got in place. The other thing that's probably noteworthy, when we stopped at the pub for a little refreshment, it's all dripping out of the bottom of the bash plate here. Probably that wall pan seal. Something's happening down in there, so I've got to check that out. Also the forks, so it's all coming out the top of the fork, and so it's happening on both sides. So you can only assume there's something not quite right there. Maybe the oil capacity is a bit too high with the added spaces for preload. Anyway, other than that, solid ride, and everything's held up, so couldn't be happier. Thanks to Phil and Dan for coming along on the adventure, and we're all looking forward to our next one.